Go ahead, Chair.
Anyway, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to call this meeting to order at 1 o'clock. I am chairing today as Councillor Thompson was unable to make the meeting today because my understanding is she's got an interesting workshop that she's participating in for the next few days. So hopefully she comes back to the table with some really good knowledge to share with the rest of us. I'd like to begin by acknowledging and honoring with gratitude that the land on which we are gathering today is a traditional territory of First Nation elders and the peoples who have lived and continue to live here and have cared for these lands. We're all pretty Zoom savvy these days, so I think everybody knows that if you're not participating immediately, if you could have your audio muted, and we'll kind of move forward with the model of when we look to move a motion that it will be accepted that you are in favor of it unless you raise your hand to say you are against it. Councillor Mausam, would you like to bring up a copy of the agenda so we can ratify it to see if anybody has any late additions to it?
Yes, Chair, it should be on its way. I'm hoping. Okay, hang on. I think you guys are seeing. Okay, I just want to, before you start, Chair, with this agenda, just want to pass along the regrets of those members who did pass along regrets. Christine, of course, Melissa, we heard from William Kelly that he couldn't make it. I also want to welcome, I believe it's Lindsay Erlinson, who is the first time with this group. I think Lindsay. Okay. So that's basically the guest list, Chair. There's what we. Okay. So back to you, Chair. I think I got that.
And just for the record, Councillor Moslin, if you would like to add that Megan Hatley from the Boundary Women's Coalition did send her regrets. She's preparing for a board meeting this evening right now.
Now, okay, correct me if I take up some time. Is she not working for Boundary Women's Coalition as well?
No, she is strictly with the Boundary Women's Coalition. She asked me to pass on her regrets.
And Darren, I heard that she made the transfer, but I never got a new email.
Okay. I will forward that to you after the meeting, Chris.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, and so at this point, does anybody have any additions to our agendas proposed by our secretary? Okay, at this point, are we comfortable adopting the agenda for the rest of the afternoon? I'm going to take that as a yes, we are going to move forward. Councillor Moslin, could you please put up the minutes of the previous meeting? I believe it was October 20th, so we can go through that.
Get there? I think we're there, Chair.
We are there.
I did have one correction. Mr. Allen did correct me about his attendance in the minutes, and I have highlighted that. That's the only correction I received by email, Chair.
Okay. So, can I get a motion to accept the previous minutes as presented by the secretary? Thank you, Tammy. Do I have a second on that? Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Any against adopting the minutes as being presented? I'm not able to see everybody in this presentation, so nobody is yelling at me loudly. I will make the assumption that we are passing those as presented.
I'm going to stop that, Chair.
I guess some introductions, Lindsay. It's great to have you at the table. Let's start with you.
Hi, so this is my first meeting and very likely my only meeting. So we've been in between team leads here at mental health and substance use. So Stacy is here now, our team lead. She's busy with another meeting, but from here on, she'll be in these meetings. So I'm kind of just her stand-in right now. Beth passed this over to me and I wasn't able to make it, but anyway, Stacy will be here next meeting and I'll pass on her regrets right now and also pass on any information for her.
And Lindsay, will you pass her email to me, please?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess at this point, we may as well kind of keep going around the table just so everybody knows who's who in the Zoom. Mr. Cooper, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure, just very briefly, Alan Cooper. I'm currently president of the Phoenix Foundation, have been for the last year and a half.
Thank you. Tanis?
Can you unmute, Janice?
Sorry about that. I'm Tanis Carson, Harm Reduction Outreach and Support for Anchors.
Tammy, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Yeah, Tammy Battersby, Community Care Coordinator at Gospel Chapel.
Thank you. Juliana?
Hi, Leanna Chadwick. I'm Secretary of the Grand Forks Senior Society.
Deborah?
Deborah's having problems with her audio today. So Deborah LaFleur and myself, Ann Palmer, are the representatives for the Grand Forks Community Coalition. We represent the community.
Thank you, Anne. Anna, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hannah Lotard, Superintendent of Schools, SD 51.
Thank you. Kathy, are you able to provide an introduction as well?
I'm not getting much of a response, Chair.
Okay, we'll loop back to Kathy. Debbie, I see that you're on here. Would you mind just doing a quick introduction?
Hi, can you hear me?
You bet.
Oh, yay. Okay, my name's Debbie. I am a community integration specialist here in Grand Forks with the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction.
Thank you. Mayor Taylor, I see that you're in the gallery. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, I found it. Yes. Hello, Mayor Taylor.
Thank you, sir. Sergeant Pepler?
Hi there. Yeah, Daryl Pepler, RCMP.
Councillor Moslin?
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, Chris Moslin. I'm here both as the city's representative, although mayor's in the gallery, and the recording secretary of the meeting. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. And I'm Darren. I'm the Executive Director of Boundary Family, and I am the, I guess, the chair for today's meeting in the absence of Councillor Thompson. So if we're following the agenda, I guess the next one is on me. So update on Hardyview and the COVID outreach population vulnerable outreach team. Yeah, business as usual. We're still averaging that 10 to 12 a night at the shelter. Weather fluctuations, we haven't seen any big increases yet, but we also haven't seen any minus 10 or 15 evenings. And COVID outreach is continuing to kind of be not only in the city, but also Area D to some of the outlying camps that are continuing to grow in the outlying areas. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Yes, I did. There was a question regarding whether or not Hardyview had the ability to increase the number of beds if the weather gets really bad.
So if the weather gets bad, we do have the ability to go back to the city to ask for a variance from the fire department and from the building inspector. That could see an increase of up to 5. But again, we kind of need to have our readiness plan in place when we see that happen.
And the other question I had was that you had mentioned last time that you were running into problems with staffing. I was wondering if your staffing issues had been fixed.
Actually, you know what, Ann, we hit a sweet spot where we did have a few folks with great backgrounds step up. So our staffing is looking really good as we've operationalized for the winter season.
Super, thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, Chair, if you don't mind, Mr. Pratt, is your shelters only open, not open 24 hours a day, is it not? Can you explain that, please?
So our shelter is, as we've moved into the November season, we are closed between 10 and 2 to allow cleaning, laundry, and the staff to kind of get their feet back under them. Don't forget, we only staff 2 at a time. So because of the size of the shelter, we want to ensure that our staff is able to do all of their tasks without also having to constantly be monitoring our clients. Again, that changes. If we go to a -20, -25 situation, we then implement our plan for that. But as it sits right now, 10 to 2, it is closed, and we do ask our clients to evacuate.
Okay, just another clarification for me on that closure. Is that part of the description of having an emergency weather shelter?
So Councillor Moslin, if you look at most ECWSs in the province, most of them are closed between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. So most ECWSs only operate from 10 p.m. till 8 o'clock in the morning. So we actually have the broadest range of hours of most ECWSs in the province.
Yep, thank you very much for those explanations, Mr.
You're
Pratt.
quite welcome. Anybody else? Okay. Councillor Thompson is not here. Councillor Moslin, will you be taking her role of updating the strengthening communities bylaw position?
You know, this is the second meeting in a row where I've had to stick on handle that result. Yes, an experienced gentleman has been hired from the Kamloops area. Once again, I don't have his name at my fingertips.
John Wilson.
Was it?
John Wilson.
John Wilson, that's right. I'm kind of hoping that there are other people around the table who now have familiarity with John. Because, you know, what part of the role, the inevitability is trying to liaise with all the other services that are aimed at the transient population. So he comes to the city with, you know, just starting last Monday. You know, I haven't heard it. Perhaps somebody at the table would like to comment, has echoes, whatever, some feedback. So far, the feedback I'm getting is quite positive. Nonetheless, I think I've updated, he's here for a year, as per that grant. And he is an employee of the city. Okay. Did that help, Chair?
Mike's on,
I'll try to answer any questions.
whatever you want.
I have a question. Did this new person have any background in addictions and mental health?
Yes. In fact, that was his strength. He came to us in Kamloops, where he worked with the transient population there. Okay.
Guys, we can hear you.
Hi, it's Debbie. I just wanted to say that myself and Ashley from Coins met with John and Dave on Monday. And he's very anxious to learn about the community partners around, and we'll be meeting again to share what information we have with him.
Thanks very much for that, Debbie. I appreciate that.
Yeah, actually, I can echo that too. John came by the detachment with Leadford yesterday, filled us in on what he wants to accomplish, what he wants to do. Right now, he's just getting his feet wet. He's meeting with a lot of the stakeholders and stuff. Yeah, definitely someone who wants to be involved, and he knows what he wants to do, and I think he'll be a welcomed addition for sure.
Sorry, off topic, but Tammy seems to have her audio going, and it's really burbling up on my computer. I don't know what it's doing to others.
Yeah.
It appears that Tammy has stepped away from her computer, so hopefully when she comes back, she can. Actually, Chris, you should be able to mute her. You're out. There we go.
I just did. Sure.
If there's no other questions for Councillor Moslin, we will move on to, it's back to you, Councillor Moslin. Update on visit with Minister Eby on Monday.
Yeah, I was, yeah, Mr. Eby, can you hear me, Chair? Just on how, okay, thank you. Mr. Eby did visit us on Monday. It was quite a fruitful visit. He was very busy. It was well scheduled, great lunch. Anyways, the substance of his visit was probably not as important as the appearance of his visit, in the sense that this is recognition from the Minister of Housing and the Attorney General that a community of 4,000 is engaged. I can't imagine where Minister Eby's head is right today. But it was very, I was very, I felt, I was honored, I'd like to say I was honored by the ministerial visit into Chambers. And I think it reflects a lot of the hard work that the people at this table are doing, Chair, in my opinion. And anyways, that's basically it. I know there is still things that are waiting to be announced to fall in place. You know, looking at Moto, he was taken to a couple sites, potential shelter sites, as well as he came and visited staff and other work engaged groups at the Hardyview Lodge. Cheering is tended to, I think it was like 1 o'clock or 1:30 or something. Anyways, it was you know, it was a kind of a whirlwind visit, and he did get to meet from the people, and he did hear basically some of the requests. I think the most important request that I heard was keep listening, and yeah, that was it. That's the visit.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions regarding that report out? Okay, hearing none. Sergeant Pepler, do you have anything to update the table with?
Yeah, I was able to get my one member back, so now I'm operating at 5 of 8 constables, which has allowed us to reduce our on-call, and we have a member working from 7 a.m. to 3 a.m. and then with the 4 hours of on-call. And then there's 2 members working as opposed to 1. But when God opens one door, closes another, and I've lost a PSE, an office person. And so we're working with a reduced office staff, which might mean we'll reduce our office hours. Stuff like criminal record checks are not going to be a priority. So whereas we have a 3 to 5 day turnaround, we could be looking at a 3 to 4 week turnaround. But no, like I say, and we also had a new cadet promised us he or she will arrive January 2022. And then 2 staffing actions for 2 more members, so.
Thank you for that. Just out of curiosity, what's staffing in the Midway detachment these days?
So Corporal Peters is there with Constable Staples, so that's, and they're missing 2 constables. Both are on long-term leave right now. Phil Peters there has done a good job with getting provincial support team and reserve constables to backfill. But yeah, I don't think a 3rd or 4th member have been named yet. They did secure a residence in Greenwood so that they can bring an extra member in and provide them with a house.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions from the table for Sergeant Pepler? Okay, hearing none. Juliana, do you have anything to update regarding seniors at this point?
Hi, thank you, Darren. Yes, I do. I thought maybe I'd just share, this is 3 items here, but the Seniors Advisory Committee, we did meet last month, and just basically to update you on what we discussed, where we went over an inspection report done on one of the buildings that was being considered for a senior center. We had an individual come forward and talk to the committee on some issues, and we're hoping to help that individual. And I can update you more hopefully maybe next month. The age-friendly action plan. I believe Councillor Moslin was going to take that under wing and take it to the council so that it's part of a consideration in the planning department when they're doing their OCP. There were other support options from a new member. We discussed things like remedies in the community to stay in touch with seniors and assistance to the caregivers, and discuss gaps in senior care. the Boundary Family Services and Better at Home are helping put together a hard copy list of numbers that will help seniors in the community. So we're hoping that will come out and we can pass that out. There was a suggestion, and because the school district is here, I would just like to tell you that there was a suggestion from the member about teaching, well, basically in the same way as cooking and metalwork is taught to high school students. Is there, or could there be a consideration for a program to teach high school kids how to prepare for a medical career, whether it be a nurse, caregiver, paramedic, and if that could at all be a consideration, and if that idea would even have any merit in the school board system. We're just putting it out there because it's something that we as seniors think about now, and it'd be nice to see some of the young people getting involved in that. And if you have any seniors issues that you want to bring forward to this committee, you can certainly contact me and we'll put it on our agenda to discuss. The second item is that the seniors society is actually having their AGM tomorrow. It's our first meeting in 2 years. It is an AGM, and we will be voting on a new board. So there may be a different person sitting here next month. We'll see how the membership votes. And then some happy news. We're very pleased that a new senior center has come to fruition finally. They will be renovating the old hall in the park, and council has injected money back into a senior center, which is what they promised to do, and we're very happy with that. We're happy that they'll be consulted when they start renovations, and hopefully, I don't know a timeline, but maybe by the spring or summer, we'll have a new senior center. We'll be able to do a ribbon cutting, and it's all going to work out. I know people have made comment about going back to the park. We're fine with it, and we're going to make it work. That's all. And last item is something that Better at Home, a volunteer, asked me to mention to you that they are having. This is a Better at Home, so it's not even my organization, but they are having a seniors drop-in at the Legion on November 23rd from 1 to 3. And if you want more information on that, you can get a hold of the Better at Home coordinator for that, Rachel Warner. But I've already had a lot of comment and sent it out to our members, and it seems it's going to be well attended. So that's something that you may want to let any senior friends know about. Okay, and thank you for listening to me.
Are there any questions for Juliana at this point?
I have one. Juliana, I was wondering, are they going to actually fix the kitchen so you'll be able to go back to doing a lot of the hosting for memorials and things that you had done before?
I believe the kitchen that is there is a write-off. That will be removed, and when they engage us in construction, we are going to ask for a little kitchenette or something like that to do just what you said, so that we will be able to lease the hall again, and we'll have it able to use it for those types of functions. Yes.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Juliana?
Chair, if I might.
Yes.
One first off, Juliana, I have to assure you that I said the phrase age-friendly community a dozen times at the last meeting. That OCP, I'm really hopeful, is actually going to hit the light of day and get a draft to the public, because there's other things that we don't know what we don't know. Anyway, thank you for that. I did pass it along. And I have to say that I personally am greatly relieved, and I look forward to reinvigorating that building in City Park. Okay, it is a risk for the city, risk for the seniors, but though I have felt we live beside two rivers, we need to take a few risks. Anyhow, thank you very much, Juliana, for bringing those causes forward.
Sorry, I got one more question. Sorry, Juliana. Is there any way of, seeing as there's going to be repairs and stuff done anyhow, to try and get some kind of a money raised perhaps to get you something more than just a kitchenette?
I think our council liaison is Councillor Baker, of course, and he's not here right now. I think that's all to be discussed in that. That portion of it, I really don't know about. So that's something to consider, and I'll certainly bring it forward when we're asked. Good idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, so next we actually have update on provincial outreach, and it states Heather, but Heather's not here. So Deb, are you comfortable updating on that program?
Yeah, is that Heather Elliott?
I believe it is.
Okay, because she won't be coming to this
Yeah.
anymore. I mean, she may occasionally, but she's in Nelson and Trail and Castlegar now. So it is me, and I don't really have any updates other than what I mentioned about John at City Hall, that everybody will be working together. We're having a meeting to kind of compare our notes in terms of community access and what's available in the community for people. And that's basically all I've got for an update at this point.
Does anybody have any questions for Deb? Tammy?
Tammy, you're muted.
Sorry, new tablet. Just wanted to offer some clarification. When you say community access, is that like a list of resources available to everyone?
Yeah, so I've got a few resources that you know, you being one of them, that people can grab at Service BC. When I worked there as an employment and assistance worker, we had it made up where you can go for taxes, where you can go for the food bank when it operates, that sort of thing.
So if you're not aware of it, there is a navigational tool that Interior Health, in connection with Selkirk College, they had their nursing students put together.
Yeah, I have that one as well.
And then there's also the Boundary Women's Coalition has an up-to-date list of boundary-wide services that's like 3 pages long. So that might be helpful to you.
Yeah, I might have that one too. And I think what we're going to do is sit together and put one whole big one together, kind of make it all one for all of us to share.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Anchors used to put out one. I don't know if they have recently, but they used to put out one that was Kootenay Boundary and very extensive. The last copy I had was prior to the flood. So.
Okay. That'll be a place to check for sure. Thanks, Tammy. I appreciate it.
Are there any other questions for Deb? Okay. Lindsay, you are on here as an item. Any updates from AMHSU at this point?
I do not have any updates. Like I say, we got a new team lead and she'll be joining you guys in January. So I'm sure she'll have some updates for you then.
Thank you. Tammy, updates from Whispers and Blessings.
Yes, so I can't give you any updates from Whispers, though I see them twice a week when they come to shop in our food recovery program. But I can give you updates from the chapel. So we are finally have our drop-in space open. That's what this is right here.
Great.
And we're open Fridays 10 till 2. That was our old time, but it seems to fit beautifully with the shelter shutdown time as well. So we have a pot of soup on and some coffee and tea and company, a dry goods pantry, craft projects, and all people are welcome. all ages, all genders, all kids, adults. We do have a gymnasium where kids can play with the ball, whatever. We don't have childcare, but the drop-in center is open and has been for 2 weeks. So that's going very well. Our food security meeting is still meeting once a month. Our next meeting is next Monday. And the purpose of that is for us to network and kind of group problem solve challenges that each of us face. Out of that food security meeting comes a lot of networking for the food recovery program that we're doing now. We have since February 1st processed 140,000 pounds of food and redistributed that out to the boundary. So none of it has gone in the landfill. Scraps have gone to farmers, and the usable unsold food has been distributed out from Big White right to Christina Lake. So our community outreach program, we tend to pair up with Interior Health, just because it's always good to go in pairs when you're connecting with other people. 2 minds are better than one. So I have met Stacy at Interior Health. Happily, we worked together on a project at Big White last week, and I'm happy to see her here in the boundary. I think she'll be a great addition to this table as well. So, so that's going well, and happy to have a little bit more ability to connect with people in our community despite COVID. Hoping that that's going to become less and less as we move forward. So, thank you, Darren.
Do we have any questions for Tammy? Okay, Tanis, would you like to provide an update on where things are shaking with your new gig with Anchors?
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Business as usual with Anchors. New update is that I believe it was last Monday that council passed a resolution that the city of Grand Forks offered the use of the Scout Hall to Anchors for one of our groups called Hope. In principle, on the first and third afternoons, first and third Thursdays of the month for our meetings. And yeah, so that was an open meeting, and council says some people probably heard that, and I'm sure there's questions around that. And the city staff will work with the operators of the Scout Hall to accommodate us on that. So I'm open for questions if anybody has any questions about that.
Tammy.
I just wanted to mention that the drop-in service providers are welcome to make use of that space. So yes, Deb, you can join us. And Tanis, I wanted to say that if you ever need space, that the drop-in would be available to you as well. So.
And what's that drop-in?
The drop-in, that's where we had our meetings for the point in time count. It's been reworked a little bit because we needed a new roof, but we could always share that space here as well. We do have a back entry, so there's more privacy around people coming and having a meeting and having the privacy to counsel a bit. So
I'd love to talk to you about that, Tammy. Thank you.
Yep.
Do we have any other questions for Tanis? Thanks for that update, Tanis. Do we have, yep. Do we have any other updates from anybody else at the table? Okay.
Mr. Cooper has his hands up here.
Ah, missed that. Sorry, please go ahead, Alan.
Sure thing. Well, I think I should update people on a few things with regard to the Phoenix Foundation. Excuse me if any of these are repeats. We of course now have moved to a part-time executive director position. We're very pleased that we've hired Sandra Wade as being a part-time executive director. We look to her as to providing leadership, both leadership and advice to the board. Sandra was most recently in her work life executive assistants to 2 superintendents, one the superintendent of Surrey School District and one Burnaby. And so she has a lot of experience in dealing with boards, board policies, and so on. So we're very excited to have her on board. We've just finished a strategic planning session and are waiting for written results of that, looking at the next 3 years. So we have some good plans in place dealing with, and this may not be exciting things, but we know that we need to go through our policies, our procedures, our bylaws, and all of those sort of things. So those are all underway and getting started. A couple of the key things that we're looking at, one, we're looking at enlarging our board. We do need to get more people on the Phoenix board. And a key thing for us, I think, is increasing diversity on the board. So we're looking to see how we can increase diversity on our school boards. Just an example of the kind of people that we have here in the Boundary region. We just welcomed a new board member by the name of Isaac Holman. Isaac and his wife live a small farm outside of Greenwood. Interestingly enough, they're both university professors. He's a full-time research professor at the University of Washington, and she is at UBC. So those are but they're living on a small farm at Greenwood and interested in food security and so on. So it's just an example of the kind of strengths that we can see across the Boundary region. The other thing that we're looking at in terms of the Phoenix Foundation is a new direction with grants, really looking at something called more trust-based philanthropy, which is really trying to streamline and make more efficient the granting process, looking at multi-year grants in terms if we've got grant recipients, why should we make them continue to go through a lot of bureaucracy if they've shown that they've been responsible people and worthwhile grant recipients, why not make the process a little bit easier? So that's going to take a little while to work out. We have to revise our grants manual and so on with that. With regard to our endowments, our contributions to our endowments are down this year because we haven't been able to do as many community outreach things as we would have liked to, but the whole endowment now sits at a little around $3.5 million. Our investments have paid off in a huge amount this way. So we've hopefully in the new granting process, we'll be able to actually have a larger amount of money to grant out than in previous years, simply because of the investments have proven so worthwhile. I think that's basically it, but it is interesting to also see how the ongoing costs are increasing. We're required under CRA regulations, so on, to have an audit every year. So we've just paid the second part of the bill for this year, and we're a nonprofit, so our audit costs were $12,000 this year. We've been informed that our audit costs next year will be going up somewhere in the range of $15,000 to $18,000, which certainly in my mind is quite a staggering cost, but it's part of the process that we have to follow as a nonprofit to make sure that we're stewarding the money that's entrusted to us very well. So it may be that Sandy Wade might be attending these meetings in the future. Certainly she's working her way into being the face of the Phoenix Foundation, but we'll have to see. I'm quite willing to attend another meeting or two if need be. And that's my update on the Phoenix Foundation.
Thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions for Alan?
Yes, I'm curious about this audit thing that you have to do. Is this all nonprofits are going to have to do this now?
I'm not sure of that. I do know that we have asked, do we have to go through this major audit process every year? And the auditors have said, well, basically, yeah, kind of, in order, to make sure that we are, going along with the requirements of CRA and making sure that we are as open and transparent as possible. So it is we're all, I guess, surprised and not more than a little bit alarmed at the way that the audit costs go up. They're very expensive. And we've looked around at a variety of different auditors. The problem is once you even try to go to different auditors, there's a learning curve in learning about your organization. So we will be certainly looking around to see if there's any way of reducing those costs, but I really don't think so.
Thank you. It seems there are a lot of nonprofits out there that don't seem to have any accountability. So it'd be nice to know that this is something that all nonprofits have to actually abide by.
Actually, if I may, Anne, so usually it comes down to a funder's request or a board's sense of obligation. So a board has a huge responsibility to be fiduciarily transparent and responsible. So an audit is really covering the board members and ensuring that they are meeting their obligation. Your insurance policy for your nonprofit actually really hinges on how often you are audited. So a good board will have insurance against their own misconduct or their liability. And yeah, but you're right. It would be nice to see it across a level playing field. I think because the Phoenix Foundation operates in more of a trust setting as opposed to a direct delivery model, they even have a higher threshold. And you're right, Alan, audit costs it's a cost of doing business, and it is unfortunate, but you're pretty much bang on with what the costs are these days for a nonprofit to be audited.
And just to add to that, Darren, you mentioned director's insurance. That's another cost that we have to have. We've just paid the bill for that too. So, as we operate, it's important for us to understand that we have some significant ongoing costs in order to operate. And I like the way that you use the term fiduciary. We have a very strong fiduciary responsibility to our community across the boundary to make sure that we make the very best use that we can of these funds entrusted to us.
Are there any other questions for Alan? Okay, once again, Chris, you're up. This is kind of like the Chris Moslin Roadshow today.
Yeah, Chair. Yeah, and I feel the absence of my colleagues here. Because for one thing, I can't see the agenda. So this is the report on the homeless count. Is that what we're doing? Okay. I'm going to share it if it's okay with you, share just to get the group going here. Basically, we put the subcommittee met, Chair, yourself, myself, and Deb Pownall all participated, and we started with this document about hidden homeless enumeration. This is different. This is a different population than the visibly homeless, and it's kind of a scary situation in our town. It's because there is a lot of homelessness out there that is not hidden. In fact, it's quite apparent. So the subcommittee did talk about the parameters on who is to be counted. And we did review past studies that did do the counting. And after some discussion, this is the important part, the subcommittee agreed to focus on two specific populations that would benefit from enumeration. Seniors aging out of current homes is one population, and those inadequately housed would be another. If you counted those populations, the count would be able to assist in finding funding solutions for each of these specific populations. And the subcommittee was aware of potential funding solutions for that would tie into, for example, seniors, X number of population that would qualify for SAFER or for subsidized provincial housing. If you could point to a specific population, you could increase the odds of the community eventually finding a funding solution for that population. So basically, we did decide that what we would like to do, and so waste account was kind of interesting. I remember Sergeant Pepler here at the last meeting, he said, yeah, well, you count the homeless and you multiply by 2, right? Yeah, and anyhow, the studies I've read said you multiply by 3.1. Got me. Anyways, but also I want to put in front of the members of here today that the members of this table also have access to numbers. You service, the social aid services present at this table service of populations that you might be able to identify as either a senior at risk of aging out of accommodation, and those who are desperate for some sort of housing. So we've decided to seek the guidance from BC Housing on their data needs and their preferred methodology. And from that, after that consultation, we would compose a survey document, bring a draft to this table, and then after it was finalized, distribute it through the member groups of this table, industry, and anywhere else we could put it. The timeline for that count is basically there in front of you. So that we would have numbers, maybe March, April, or somewhere around that, to present to this table and to, try to figure out what to do next. Hopefully we'll have a clearer idea what to do next by those months. Anyhow, that's the budget for the count. Well, a lot of it will be driven by volunteer effort, city in-kind assistance, maybe some BC housing management and expertise. More numbers to come. Anyhow, that's the report of the subcommittee, and over to you, Chair. I know you were gonna seek some guidance from BC Housing and Deb Pommel. Anything else you'd like to add to the report?
Deb, is there anything you'd like to share at this point?
No, no.
Okay. So Councillor Moslin, I did reach out to Anna Frias from BC Housing, who's kind of my person in the agency there that has the huge background in doing that. And I have not heard back from her yet. So I did reach out asking for some guidance on how best to do a count like this. So hopefully we'll hear something by the end of the week.
So that's my report, Chair. Should we look to the table for how they want to proceed? They want to just let the subcommittee continue and provide a report at the next meeting?
I would love to get some feedback from the table. Are we on the right path, or are we completely off in left field? Councillor Moslin, if you wouldn't mind dropping the share so we can kind of see the whole screen. I'm unable to see all of our participants. Thank you. Tammy, please.
So I did have a couple of questions. One question was, if you're planning on doing a count, is that for a count representing the city limits of Grand Forks? Or is that the city of Grand Forks and rural, or does it extend further throughout the boundary? So that's one question. The second question is, can we move forward to begin meeting some of the housing needs prior to doing a count like this, or will this count in fact prevent us from moving forward with meeting housing needs?
Councillor Moslin, do you want to field this one?
Well, I'll try on both those ones. My earliest indications is that the count, we would be, if it was to include communities outside of this area D and the city of Grand Forks, my thinking is, yeah, we definitely would provide survey forms to a group out there, on the understanding that we are a regional center, that perhaps anything developed might happen in Grand Forks, it might not, whatever. And on the second question, there are things in the works for housing, both in the private market. I mean, there's new apartments in downtown core. There's a new subdivision being built at the end of 19. There's more apartments being built along 68. We are still pursuing supportive housing as well as we can. But what the subcommittee felt was there by looking at previous studies, they all talk about data gaps.
Mhm.
If we've got a number on the seniors, then there were specific funding pots that we were looking at that we're not chasing right now. That would strengthen it for future funding solutions.
So would that then be the purpose for doing a count, is the metrics needed for the funding gaps?
For me, that's the big reason. Although as an old teacher, I know that what's counted counts.
Yes.
And sometimes just by the act of counting, we attach importance to it. Anyways, so that's.
So I agree with that, that piece where counts can be important. But I also have some thoughts around, you know, the people that are couch serving perhaps are couch serving this week. Next week, they could be on the street. And so, you know, I think in terms of whenever there's an emergency, like what we're seeing at the coast, you know, people are in their cars and immediately that's being rectified as quickly as the government possibly can. And, you know, they're not having to do data counts and metrics and all of this to make it happen. They're just doing what's necessary first. And I wonder sometimes if gathering these metrics becomes a gerbil wheel we get on while people are still cold. And that's always my first concern, that the housing happens and maybe the numbers can come later. Maybe we can be counting people as they go into houses and finding out where they were before they went into a house. So.
Over to you, Chair, your turn.
I don't know that I have anything to add. I do, Tammy knows that my heart resides in the West Boundary as well, and I would love to see an expanded count. So that becomes a conversation with the mayors and councils in outlying community to see if they're willing to participate in these. I get your frustration, Tammy.
Yeah.
But I think you've been around long enough to know that it takes money. And at the end of the day, government does not spend money unless they have a valid reason to. And at this point, we have to show numbers. As Councillor Moslin pointed out, our concern is, as we look at our aging population and we look at our current numbers of homeless people, our demographic skews 50 and above, and it will continue to skew 50 and above as housing becomes more and more precarious. The one thing that has shot us in the foot is the RDKB housing assessment that was released right as COVID hit. Because what that did is that projected a surplus of housing in the next 10 years. So that basically tells the government not to invest a penny in our region because we will have 270 excess houses in the next 10 years. Not taking into account COVID or urban flight or any of the other things that have come up. So there is a bit of a method to this madness, because if we rely strictly on that data, we get nothing.
So how then can a service provider such as myself collect data that won't duplicate? So for example, if I'm serving somebody in my pantry and I became aware that they are couch surfing, how do I not duplicate that with somebody else in the community that's serving them?
And that's one of the questions that the committee is trying to get answers to, because best practices really tend to being that 3.1 ratio that Chris mentioned of you take your current street entrenched, multiply by 3.1, good enough. And we know, especially in the West Boundary, that doesn't even come close to cutting it, because if you look at the housing stock in the West Boundary, as people age in home, a lot of those homes really are not fit for human habitation. So we need to be prepared for that exodus out of those homes into general community. Where are we putting those vulnerable seniors?
Well, and how many people are staying in the home they were raised in until they're 30, because there's no home to move to, right?
Yeah. But again, I know that you lean towards our most vulnerable population. The simple fact is we are short all forms of housing, not just housing for our vulnerable pop or our hard to house. We are short. I think Anna can speak to this on behalf of the district, or Lindsay's new manager on behalf of IH. All of our employers in our region are short employees because we are short housing.
Oh, I agree. I agree. And right up to the high level fancy mansion housing, we are short housing.
Are there any other questions regarding the committee? Are we on the right path? And you know, Tammy, that's a really valid point. How to avoid double or triple counts? Because that was something that did happen in the past with the informal counts in our community, which did inflate our numbers, which actually hurt us at the other end.
Darren?
Yes, ma'am.
I know that they were talking, there was that group, in fact, it was going to be a big help to Juliana's, the Senior Society, that we're going to be building a home for seniors, and then it got kiboshed, and apparently it was BC Housing that decided not to put the money into it. And I thought I read somewhere that when Evie was here, that they were going to be talking to him about it again. What, did anything come of that? Because it goes back to the whole thing that there's no doubt, because I see it all the time in this town, you have seniors that can't even look after their homes anymore, and their homes are falling around their ears, and they would be far better off in a community setting where they have less to look after and perhaps more people to interact with, which would certainly be better, which would then open up their houses for sale for other people moving into the community, whatever. I know it doesn't address all of the issues, but it certainly does address some of them. And yet here was a perfect opportunity, and it got blown out of the water for some strange reason. And I never even heard exactly why. Does anybody have information on that?
Chair, if I might,
Yeah, by all means, Chris.
basically, you know, the hard, sad news about Whole Way House, it was a wonderful proposal and certainly worthy. But the government had X amount of money to spend, and it was oversubscribed by 500%. So Whole Way House was not the only worthy project that didn't get approval. Part of the reason why we are focusing on this population, at least the subcommittee, is an eye to the next funding cycle. We don't, you know, I don't know if Whole Way House, that organization will come forward with a project, but we certainly want to be able to show data that says to whatever group comes forward for the next seniors project, hopefully soon, that there is this much clientele that's in short need. But we have, if we have, you know, some hard and fast numbers, it's a lot more convincing to attract capital than just saying, you know, we got a lot of seniors. Yeah, we've got a lot of seniors. How many? That's what we need to know.
Well, and if I may, Councillor Moslin, the other thing too is the vulnerabilities of those seniors moving forward, because we're very aware that there are a lot of seniors that they're not ready for full care, but they're also not able to live independently. So that semi-supported, light housekeeping, transitional stage of life, there is no real depth of service for that. And let's be honest, if you're trying to pay for your parents' home care out of pocket as they age in their home, that becomes incredibly burdensome. So we're trying to find ways to not only figure out raw numbers, but also what those vulnerabilities are. When we look at what do we need to ask the government for, how many semi-supported, how many fully supported, as our population continues to age. And you're right, Ann, freeing up those current properties does bring a pool of available resources back on the market if they haven't fallen into such repair that they're bulldozers. That becomes a tricky part, is how do you intervene while there's still value in that home and to provide service for those seniors that are vulnerable.
I wonder if this is also not something that, you know, with the senior society and everything else, that, you know, get a greater focus going out there looking at that. I mean, I watched a neighbor that he couldn't look after his place anymore, and it literally was falling apart. And unfortunately, the person who's bought it is in even 10 times worse shape. And I see the whole house is going to be a dump within 2 years. And this is somebody that also shouldn't be in a house. And there's too much of that. So, and it's a mistake, because it's a domino effect. And I don't know why the government can't see this. They're so busy buying up motels that they're missing the boat, that there is a huge aging population that are reaching the point where they can't look after their homes. And we should be starting right there, because that would open up other things, even for some of these homes to be then taken and turned into so like group homes. And there's no reason why that couldn't happen. So I just think their government's missing the boat. I really do.
So if I can speak to that, and part of the problem is incentives. We as humans operate on incentives. So when you go to a senior who's aging in home, who may have been there for 40 years, that's where their memories are. That's where they raise their children. That's where they lived with their partner. How do you incentivize them leaving that in a gracious way? Because you can't force them out. You can't say thou must move. How do you create an incentive for them to feel safe and comfortable transitioning to that next stage of life? Because I don't have the answer to that. So if you do, please share it.
I don't have the answer, but I sometimes think it's like, we look at our home, my husband and I, and we're very much aware of what our abilities are and where we're at. And we've put a lot of time and effort into creating, well, actually restoring a Victorian home. And I would not want to be here watching it fall apart around my ears. So I tend to think that this is where the seniors is so important and why they should never have lost their building the way they did, because that created a sense of community where people can talk. And if there were more things coming up saying, hey, have you seen this new, hallway or whatever it was that was going to be here, and how lovely it is and how there's support, and yet you can have your own place, and yet if you need more help, you can get it. I think people aren't actually stupid. And I think a lot of people are sitting in their homes looking at them falling apart going, how did I ever get here? And how do I get out of it? So I think it's that whole open conversation, and that's what the Senior Society should be all about and is all about, and has been lost for almost 3 years.
Fully agree with that. But just for clarity, Ann, Holway House was not semi-supported housing.
Okay, I didn't know that. I thought it was going to be slightly supportive as well.
No, it was strictly a residential. It was basically Raven Place for seniors that could live independently and pay their rent.
Okay, so essentially then we need to be looking at something that is going to be a transitional. It has to be transitional to where they can end up getting more help as they need help, and yet still feel like they're, living their life and not, being shoved into a chair and ignored all day, which happens in a lot of facilities. So it's all about the dignity of getting older as well. And I think sometimes that gets completely ignored. So yeah, I don't have all the answers. I just think we need to be pursuing this because in the meantime, like you said, you've got homes that have reached the point that they just need to be bulldozed.
So what I'm hearing from the table is that Chris and Deb and I should keep plugging away at this, wait to hear back from Anna at BC Housing, and then bring another report back in December. Is that the consensus of the table? A lot of head nods, thumbs up. I'm not hearing anything against. Chris, Deb, are we comfortable with this?
Certainly, Chair, except about coming back to the table in December.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, please bring that up now. Now's as good a time as any.
Chair, I went back to look at our terms of reference. Originally, we were going to just meet quarterly, right? Anyways, Chair, I was wondering if the group would be amenable to not having a meeting in December, but to go to the third Wednesday in January instead for the next meeting, which I believe I did put down on the agenda as January 12th, oh, sorry, 19th. Did I get that right?
We've got a thumbs up from Ann on that, some head nods. Is anybody adverse to skipping December and reconvening in January? Perfect. Are there any other late items of business that we want to bring up? Okay.
I have a question.
By all means.
Is anybody aware of a group home being built in Grand Forks?
So there is a development over by Hutton that is being built with CLBC. That will be for adults with developmental neurocognitive issues.
How many people will it hold?
I've heard varying figures, Daryl. I've heard everything from 4 to 8. So I'm not quite sure what the true number is. Okay. Can I get somebody to throw their paw in the air and ask for an adjournment? Awesome. Thank you, everybody. And I won't see you till January, some of you. So please have a great holiday time and be safe out there.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Yeah.
That one was short and sweet.
Good, eh? Yeah.